this holiday season actually turning out to be okay.
Absolutely. I think it's been a healthy consumer environment. If you look at the Mastercard Spending Pulse numbers, which measures all of retail, not just the Mastercard numbers, it shows that from October 11th to December 24th, which is what we're looking at as the full season, the consumer grew 3% versus a year ago. And if you had asked me back in March whether or not there was a shot that you were going to see positive growth like that, I would have said, you're kidding. Those numbers are almost essentially in line with what we saw in 2019 in terms of growth. So it's a healthy consumer. It's very different than we saw before, much more digital.
Well, let's talk about that, because it's interesting. You, Matt, and I were talking in the break, and we were talking about everybody's kind of all in on your home right now.
Yep. Absolutely. Home, you're nesting, you're not at work, you're fixing up your house. So anything related to home, furnishings, electronics, stay-at-home types of activities, grocery, doing extremely well. Apparel, not doing well. Department stores. Within an apparel, which declined 19% during the holiday season, you see still strength in athleisure and some of the casual dressing. Nobody's going out to events, so they're not buying dresses and items like that. That'll come back in time, but you're having this gravitating towards the home, but you also have this digital environment. People aren't comfortable being in the stores. The malls are having a very difficult time. Apparel stores. What you're seeing is the big box retailers, which have been winning throughout this environment, the Home Depot, Lowe's, Targets, Walmarts, et cetera, doing extremely well. And that continued during the holiday season. But there's one other thing I think is fascinating. You see strength in the suburbs versus the cities. People aren't going into the offices. That the savings rate you talked about earlier going up, it's also people aren't spending on commuting. They're not eating in restaurants. That's leading you towards the dollars going towards items like the home and home improvement.
So, Steve, how does this, in terms of kind of some of the patterns we're seeing right now and the increase in online, how much of that stays with us post-pandemic in your view? Because we've constantly been talking about online kind of overtaking brick and mortar. We still have a long way to go when it comes to that. But I do think that there are people who never ordered, whether it was food or some other things online, all of a sudden did it for the first time. And they're like, this is pretty easy. So what changes dramatically, potentially, when it comes to retail post-pandemic?
I think we've probably seen 8 years of change in 8 months. You now have digital being about 20% of the total purchases. That means that 80% is still being done in a physical store. So we shouldn't be writing off stores because stores are still critically important. I think that a lot of the changes that we're seeing are here to stay. It's that the digitization of society, you're going to have working differently. People are going to have a mix of in their offices and at home. That means they're going to have to have fixing up their home on a continued basis. Restaurants are going to come back. Apparel will come back. But I think that more importantly, some of the societal changes that we've seen, the consumer, and it used to be more the Gen Z customer, now it's everybody concerned about brands and brand values, social justice issues, environmentally conscious, what the brands stand for, how the products are made. Those kinds of changes, I think, are going to stick with us. I also think that the trend towards moving out of the cities, right now, suburban sales are much stronger than you're seeing in some of the urban areas. I think cities aren't going to die, that's for sure. You have enormous amount of the cultural aspects of the cities that are going to be vibrant. But I do think that some of these changes are going to be sticking with us.
So what kind of retailer do you not want to be, Steve, right now, when you look at what's going to come maybe in the next 2 to 4 years, let's say?
Well, the ones you didn't want to be were the financially distressed apparel retailers like the Neiman Marcus's, the J.C. Penney's, the Brooks Brothers, the J. Crews that already have gone bankrupt during the pandemic. I think that the inline apparel retailers in malls are still stressed because the malls aren't the place that consumers are shopping. They're shopping in outdoor strip malls, but indoor shopping malls are slower to recover. So I think that's going to be a difficult environment for some time to come. I think that broadly, restaurants are still having a very difficult time. I was pleased to see that the pandemic support bill got signed last night, but restaurants are in terrible condition. Now, you're going to see a resurgence in restaurants when once we're into the post-pandemic period, but you're also going to see a reset of rents. You're going to see real estate being very different. You look at vacancy rates of, let's say, in New York, of Manhattan, Soho, and Madison Avenue, 30–40% vacancy rates.
Right.
Retail real estate prices will go down, and you're going to see a reset in all these categories.